Hi everybody, I'm Zan from Felon Fair, and as we're coming into Weekend Warrior, we wanted to make a new video for you guys to briefly explain how combat works at Weekend Warrior. Now this is really important because this is the primary safety issue at Weekend Warrior. Obviously we're coming to Weekend Warrior with the idea that we want to go on an adventure, we're taking some risks, that sort of stuff. Anytime you have any sort of fun, there's going to be some risks, but we have created a system that's very safe and that you can walk out of without a scratch. So we want, as long as everybody abides by that, we want to give you guys as much information as possible. If you have questions, ask your faction leaders and they can give you all the details on how to do this safely. Now, when we're talking about combat at Weekend Warrior, the goal is not to bludgeon your enemy to death. The goal is not to destroy them. The goal is to engage in a communication. You want to communicate with them that you have struck them and nothing more, right? So that requires some discretion. We've created an event that has, in some ways, kind of loose rules and guidelines because we trust our players and we want to instill the ethos of this sort of combat with all of you. So we need your partnership as we're engaging in this combat for it to remain fun and to keep everybody safe. Remember that if you injure someone, you don't feel good, they don't feel good, and it's just no longer fun. So while there could be certain enjoyable aspects of a more violent sort of combat, at the type we have at Weekend Warrior, our goal is safety and fun, and you're no longer going to have fun if you're not safe. So we appreciate your understanding with that. Now, when we're talking about combat, we're talking about engaging in a communication with your enemy, right? So I am not trying to strike so heavily that I beat down his guard and just crush him, okay? My goal is to touch him in a way that he knows he has been hit. The way we describe this is full speed, so we don't make you move at 75% speed or anything like that, but medium touch, meaning you can strike somebody with a pretty significant amount of force, but any touch from light to medium counts. So as long as they register the touch, that counts as a hit. I don't care if you think that wouldn't have gone through my armor, or it was just a nick, that wouldn't affect me. Doesn't matter. If they touch you, it counts as a hit. Now, this is an honor system. We do not allow the attacker to call the hits of the other person. Now, if you're striking the person and they're not calling their hits at all, you can say, hey, time out. Man, I think I hit you there. Can we talk about this? What's going on? Do I need to strike harder? What's the issue? That's kind of an out-of-game conversation that you can have, but if you're trying to stay in game, if there's kind of a questionable thing, let them use their discretion. Now, we highly recommend erring on the side of giving your opponent the benefit of the doubt, right? So if you're wondering like, they kind of hit me, maybe they didn't, just call it, just count it, don't worry about it. Go get healed, hop back in the fight, and have fun. This is not a athletic sport where the fate of the world is in the balance. The goal is to have fun, right? So as you're engaging in combat, the legal strike areas are the lower arm, which is from the wrist to the elbow, the upper arm, which is from the shoulder, kind of right here down to the elbow, the chest and back, including the sides. Now, if you get struck in the side, just kind of judge, was that more on the front, more on the back? The upper leg, and then the lower leg. Feet and hands don't count, the groin does not count, and the head does not count. Please do not target the head. That means don't strike down like this where there's a risk of you hitting their head. Now, accidents happen, this sort of stuff happens, and I will say this at this point, everybody's gonna mess this up at some point. This is it's not actually that complicated, but we're talking about two people waving weapons around. Sometimes you're gonna accidentally pop somebody in the head, they're gonna pop you in the head. You're gonna wonder, was that a hand, was that a wrist? Everybody's gonna mess up. Sometimes you're gonna do the math wrong on your armor. You're gonna do the math wrong on your opponent's armor. You know what? Just have fun, that's okay. And just learn from that experience. And the more you do this, the more you'll get used to understanding what your armor does and that sort of stuff. If you have questions about armor, see our armor video. But as we engage in combat, we'll give a quick demonstration of that right here. We're kind of close to each other, but to stay in the frame. But as we're engaging in combat, we're fighting at about this speed. So you can see we're swinging pretty hard, but we're not going out here. I'm going to hit pretty hard here. We're not crushing the person. We're not trying to, oops, sorry. You good. We're not trying to, see, it happens, right? That was a demonstration. We're not trying to smack their sword down and beat them and crush them, right? The goal is, as we're fighting, to basically get through and tag him like that, right? So all I did is kind of graze him like that, but that counts as a hit for the torso. So let's engage in about a 30-second little battle. Let's hit each other a couple times. For this case, we're just gonna call the hit and keep moving. Actually no, if you get hit, if you get tags, like drop your arm, lose your leg, whatever. His hand. Okay, so Cole lost his arm, I lost my leg, so I'm gonna drag my leg. So he lost the leg right there. And so now he's lost 2 limbs, so he's dead, okay? Now I'm still dragging my legs. If somebody else comes up to fight, then I need to now I've still lost this leg and I start engaging with them. Also, any armor points that I've lost, I've still lost those until I'm healed by a healer. So, like I said, you saw the speed that we were going at. We were not trying to crush each other. We were not trying to bludgeon each other. Now let's talk about the use of shields. So when you're using shields, shields are very nifty, right? Obviously, you can deflect your enemy's blows, so you can block and that sort of stuff. You're allowed to move your shield around, strike at me a couple times. You're allowed to move your shield to block and stuff. You're allowed to use your shield to manipulate your enemy's shield. So I can like push a shield like that and tap him, something like that, right? What you're not allowed to do is strike your enemy with your shield. So let's say you didn't have a shield, you can put your shield down. I'm not allowed to come up and like punch him like that, all right? And you're not allowed to what we call shield bash or shield rush somebody, which is where you come up and you put your weight behind your shield and you use that shield to move their body, all right? Now, if we both have shields, or if, in different situations, you can use your shield as you're maneuvering around somebody. So like, if I'm trying to get in close to him, I can kind of do like this. I'm manipulating his shield and kind of, we've got some pressure there, right? But I'm not trying to push him and move him, and I'm not striking him. I'm basically using this as a reference point where I'm basing my position off his position, but I'm not pushing into him and I'm not striking at him. All right, so that's shields. Now, quick note on weapon damage. There's 3 levels of weapon damage. Single-handed weapons, so any weapon wielded with one hand deals 1 point of damage. Weapons of 36 inches in total length and longer, so that's end of the pommel to the tip of the blade, those deal, if wielded with 2 hands, those deal 2 damage. That includes pole arms and long swords, so and axes that are that long. So if I was to engage with a spear, then that is 2 damage strike. Now, if I go like that, that's only 1 damage. You are, in this game, you are allowed to pull, what we call pull cue, which is you can kind of use your weapon like that. As long as you keep your hands on it, that's still 2 damage. But if you go like that, that's only 1 damage. The other thing is with these sort of pole arms, be careful with the tips of them. This is the point of failure. This is where they will break if they break, and these are really expensive. These are about 180 bucks a piece. So my recommendation is to not stab with pole arms. They're much better as hewing weapons, and anywhere on the blade, so really from here to the tip, we're allowing as that counts as hewing damage, right? So I can strike like that, strike like that. Also, draw cuts count as well. It doesn't have to be a strike. It can be a draw cut as well. That counts as 1 damage. And repeated strikes count, right? So if I go like tap, tap, that counts as 4 damage, 2 hits. Now, once again, this is where discretion is required. Now, if Cole is, you can turn around. If Colton is fighting somebody over here, I'm not going to come up and I'm not going to go 1, 2, like, right? That's obviously not needed in the scenario. So I can come up and just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, take down all his armor, whatever, let him know he's dead, but I'm not bludgeoning him, right? So just be aware of that. Be cautious and be courteous. And honestly, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you don't want somebody coming up and just beating the tar out of you from the back, don't do that to people. It's just common sense. And then the last item, or last weapon, we have a video on archery. You can see that. Arrows do 3 damage. So that was the highest level of damage of any weapon that we allow. Now you can see our video on armor to see how damaged and how the points and that sort of stuff work. But once again, like I said, keep in mind the goal here is this is communication. You're communicating with your opponent that they have been struck. You're not trying to bludgeon them. You're not trying to, hurt them in any way, actually physically. Now, if we see any NPC in the game can call you out and tell you to stop, all right? The things that we're looking for is people not calling their hits, and we're looking for people striking too hard. And that the first time, if we see that, we're gonna give you a warning, all right? The second time, if we see that, we're gonna pull you aside and we're gonna basically say, hey, you need to sit down, sit out, cool down. We're gonna talk to you about this. If there's a third instance of a NPC or what we call a herald, which is a non-combatant player that has if they're wearing a purple sash and they call you out, so NPCs and heralds, they can draw you out and correct you that way. If there's a third instance of you striking too hard, you will be removed from combat and possibly from the game. All right, we do not mess around with this. If we see you, and same thing for archers. If we see archers targeting heads, first time we see something that's going, usually a lot of times you can't help at those medium range shots, but if we see somebody lobbing arrows into the top of a shield wall where only people's heads are exposed, we're gonna call you out. Second time, we're gonna have you sit down. Third time, you're done with archery. You're not shooting anymore, all right? We take safety very seriously, and folks, you can have a lot of fun without breaking any of these rules. Like I said, accidents happen. We're not out here, we're not the Gestapo. We're not, looking for you to fail and to kick you out of there. We want everybody to succeed. We want everybody to learn. This is a learning experience for everybody. So hang in there, be willing, be teachable, be willing to learn and adjust as we go. Do you have any thoughts or comments or anything I missed?
No, just safety is our top priority. So, and hit people the way you would want to be hit, especially from behind.
And let me put that. If you're a 260-pound guy and your version of wanting to be hit is you don't care if somebody bludgeons you, and you're fighting someone who is a 5'0", 100-pound girl, that does not apply anymore, right? So the treat other people as you would want to be treated does not allow you to be Mr. Tough Guy and Mr. I'll take anything you can throw at me, all right? That's just being a jerk. All right, we look for that sort of stuff, folks. We are very conscious of the safety of all our participants. We are simulating medieval combat. This is not actual combat. In medieval combat, you had people with just a spear and a tunic. You had people in full plate armor. And yep, people with more armor, more training, that sort of stuff tend to win more. But this is a game where, and as it is in this event, if you have more skill, better armor, all that sort of stuff combined, well, you will probably win more. Which means, you know what, you can be a little more gracious to other people. If you're stronger and faster, then give them even more benefit of the doubt. Like I said, we're all drawn to this because of a mutual love for medieval stuff. This is a community we're building here, and we want to engage safely and just have a great time at Weekend Warrior. I know we've really harped on safety and, the ramifications for not being safe and stuff. This is an extreme scenario. This is not something we deal with a whole lot. I think twice in the 2 years that we've done this, we've had to sit people down and talk to them, and in both cases, those people adjusted their play style and things were fine. So, we want to work with you, we want to correct you. We're all learning. I know there was one time last year where I struck somebody too hard and I had to apologize to him. I said, I'm sorry, and I just kind of recused myself for a second. There was a time where I miscounted my armor damage. And actually, I've put myself out, and then I was sitting back there thinking, man, like I could still be fighting. But I had called myself out, so we just went with it. Once again, NPCs can call you out and say, hey, you're not calling your hit. So if you're fighting an NPC, and we will show you who the NPCs are at the beginning of the event, remember that most players should not be communicating with each other, saying, hey, I hit you, damage. We don't do the system where it's like 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage. That just really breaks immersion, and I just think it's kind of silly. So we're relying on an honor system here. But remember, if you are fighting an NPC, so if you're fighting me and I see you or your friend next to you not calling their hits or something like that, we will communicate. Yes, that's a little unfair maybe, but we hold ourselves to a very, very high standard. And so we're going to hold everybody else to a high standard as well. And we want to prevent bickering and, just arguments breaking out on the field. So that's why we don't allow players to call each other out. We said, it's not a perfect system. We admit that, but it's the best. We think it's the one that works best in this scenario. So thank you everybody, thank you for watching this very long video, and we will see you all at Weekend Warrior.